I think that sustainable banks are there to continue to play a lead role in shaping the agenda in the UK. In the end, it's knowing that we can make sustainable banking easier to say yes to.
What prompted you to make that leap from HSBC?
I feel like banks can say a lot of good things, but when the pressure's on, too often put profits above both people and planet. For me, this is the time when leaders need to stand up and lead.
Is there anything you'd like to say directly to us, your customers?
I definitely would.
My name is Gillian Burke. I'm a presenter, I'm a biologist, and most importantly, in the context of the conversation we're going to be having today, I'm a Triodos Bank UK customer. Now, Triodos Bank is a global pioneer in sustainable banking. They are one of the few banks that only fund projects and initiatives that are both good for people and the planet. And they have recently appointed a CEO for their UK bank, Mark Clayton, who is joining me today to talk about his background, his views on sustainable banking, and also the future for Triodos Bank UK. So, Mark, hello.
Hi, Gillian.
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you.
Good.
Really good.
New role, new places, new experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I say new role. You are actually 6 months into this role. You've made the leap from within Triodos, from Chief Operating Officer to CEO. How's that feel?
Feels really special. It's an enormous privilege, I have to say, not just the role, but actually the organisation that I'm working for all of the reasons that you just stated. So it almost felt to me like I was sort of witnessing the best of humanity when I entered Triodos. And that's why I'm so passionate about the role. You know, as you say, I think we represent the best of ethical and values-based banking. I think the conscious use of money at Triodos and the way we lend money is truly unique. One of my first events was one of the most proud I've ever felt in all of my years in banking, because we were in a room of about 200 customers, partners, charities, social enterprises, activist groups who believe really passionately in what Triodos stands for and really care about the organisation. We celebrated £2.5 billion worth of lending as a part of that over our first 30 years. And the challenge now is to accelerate that, I think, as we go forward.
Well, I can say as a Triodos customer, having banked with High Street Bank for decades, the difference I've found with Triodos is there's this relationship with customers. I guess one of the questions for you is going to be sort of what are the priorities for the bank as you see them, and what's your focus going to be?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think to start with, maybe before I kind of get into some priorities, is a really important for me about just listening. As I joined as the COO, obviously I got to know lots of parts of the bank. There's also lots of parts of the bank that I didn't know so well. And I really want to make sure that I've sat and listened to co-workers from across the organisation to work out how the bank can be better. Being able to get out and see customers for the first time has been really wonderful. And I really want to know what our customers want from us as we go forward. And then there's the sort of the partner ecosystem, where I'm really interested to know what advocacy and partnership and collaboration can we do. So for me, there's a journey to start with, which actually is about listening really well to help work out what is the next stage for Triodos. One of my most immediate priorities is spending time understanding our business lending and our business banking business. It's really important, and it's where we have all of our impact. Very simply, we take customer deposits to do good with it. And when we lend money is where we're doing good. And so I'm really interested to know how can we grow that part of the business. We've got a wonderfully loyal customer base. At the same time, on the inside of the bank, I can see where there are things we could be better. There are times when I think our customer mindset could be sharper and stronger to deliver speed, ease, convenience for customers. So what are the blockers for our relationship managers that stops more of Triodos being out in the market? From a technology perspective, in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, we bought in Apple Pay, we bought in Google Pay in July, we bought in live chat recently, instant faster payments will come. We've also got some new insights that are going to come into our mobile apps. And there's still quite a lot of back office work in the organisation. There's not always the right levels of automation that delivers the best journey for customers. So what I'm also really keen to do is to really run hard at continuous improvement. So we're really trying to grow curiosity in our co-workers that will deliver better processes both for them, but then ultimately for our customers. We also talk about evolving our risk maturity in the bank. Maybe the best example that a lot of customers would recognise would be the financial crime landscape. It makes me sad and actually quite angry that the levels of customer fraud across the UK are growing all the time. They target the most vulnerable people, and being on top of that and delivering the highest ethical standard is really important. And then it goes into things like, how do we evolve the use of technologies like AI within the organisation? AI is here to stay. There are many ways in which it can benefit both customers and co-workers, but we're also acutely aware of the risks of AI. So we've got to be really careful about how we embrace it, but also how we source it. Within Triodos, our co-workers come very, very fast back at us to say, where are you getting it from? What's the data center? Where do they get their energy from? Is it fossil fuel led? Is it renewables led? And these are the kind of ethical choices that we're also thinking about. We're always having to work out, how do we keep up in the banking landscape, but also not follow the herd? We need to do the things that matter to Triodos customers or Triodos co-workers and make sure that we're doing the right things for us and not just doing the things because they feel like trendy tech things that you might see in the market.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, really, talking about doing the right thing for customers, your team has been giving your customers a chance to send their questions in. Well, a number of questions have been surrounding what sort of products you do offer, and probably more importantly, what you don't offer. And certainly around the availability of business current accounts. I know you spoke about your business customers earlier, but can you speak a bit more about what the situation is with business current accounts?
So last year, we actually put business savings accounts back on the shelf for the first time in a while. So a really big moment for us. That was to both new customers as well as existing customers. And the business savings account sits alongside a range then of retail savings and investments. And those balances are where we have most impact and allow ourselves to grow. The business current account's been off the shelf for a while, and I don't see that coming back on the shelf for the foreseeable future. There's a lot of challenges in getting the right product to market, but also the products where we have the biggest impact with the balances that we can really lend are in that savings and investment space. We have a fabulous team of business banking relationship managers. We cover some really interesting specialisms that have impact in the UK, from natural capital through to healthcare, social care, renewables, energy, and we need that money in which to lend. And of course that's where we have our impact. And I think some of my best moments so far, apart from when I'm with co-workers, of course, but being able to get out with customers it's really magical. It really makes your day to get a sense of what is Triodos really delivering. So a few weeks ago, I was out with Rich from Oxygen Conservation at one of their estates, the Mornicott estate down in North Devon, where I got to see for the first time, actually, how the biodiversity net gain credit market works. How do we develop nature to be a part of the economy and not in competition with the economy effectively? But within that site, there was BNG, there was rewilding of the land and the creation or restoration of meadows, regenerative farming, ecotourism. It wasn't just about some of the things about rewilding, but what was really important was creating local jobs. So there was a real people impact as well as an environmental impact to what they were doing. And then a couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege to visit a business called Chimpanzees, which we know is the UK's first, might even be the world's first dedicated play centre for disabled children. Due to open in June next year. Went to see the site as it's been developed, and going to be absolutely breathtaking. And the story of the team is really quite emotional. It actually makes me feel quite emotional. Knowing that we're funding people who've got a passion to make a difference like that is really emotive, really powerful. But it's a massive incentive to be here and to want to lead a bank like Triodos.
You're sort of funding more than just projects, so these are dreams.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's people's dreams, yeah. It's magical moments that, people going there won't know that Triodos funded it necessarily, but we know that people will go there and make memories, and that's really special.
To that point as well, though, some of the questions that have come in, there's one question in particular from a customer, which is, will Triodos become a major supporter of community energy projects?
I love that question. I'd like to think we already are. to be fair. So we've been doing a lot in community energy for a long time. So both lending directly, also supporting crowdfunding raises, so direct bond funding from investors through our crowdfunding funding platform. Done dozens of deals over the year, I think to the tune of about £85 million worth of lending. So it's quite a substantial part of our balance sheet. We would absolutely love to do more. There was a government consultation earlier this year, which we responded to, because we really feel the government needs to step up and support in this space. But the idea of engaging communities as opposed to, and communities feeling they're being opposed upon, for us makes complete sense in the way that you would, grow the energy infrastructure in the UK. It's also about how do you then directly benefit the community, both financially through the creation of local jobs, but also then being able to lift local people out of fuel poverty. So we feel there's a really strong model here, but we need the government also to help us get that model to life, and we will unquestionably then be able to lend even more into that space.
Well, you probably saw I was quite excited about that. I was like very suggestively kind of raising my eyebrow, hoping that you'd be saying yes. But I guess, just more generally though, like you say, it's a huge privilege. It's a big responsibility, but it must also be really exciting to be taking Triodos into the future. What do you see as the kind of next chapter that you hope to be helping to write for the bank?
It gives me immense excitement because I know that I'm working somewhere where ultimately I'm going to make the planet in whatever small way a better place. And one of my personal reflections, was how I want my children to feel when I hang up my boots or, when I'm not here anymore. And I want them to feel really proud that their dad did his best for the world that they're living in. We have a deep responsibility to our co-workers to continue to grow their skill set and their ability in the way that they can influence and support the world around. I want to make sure that we are absolutely a safe place for all of our co-workers to come to work in an uncertain world, and that we really embrace equality, diversity, inclusion, and that everybody can be themselves. And I really want to make sure that I've grown the bank, knowing that in growing the bank, that I'm having, and the team are having, more impact in the world as a consequence of doing so in those areas where we've got really strong mission fit. We've entered this world in the last couple of years that I don't think anybody could see coming. So from mistrust of politicians now to mistrust of independent science, onto climate denial, which feels like it's accelerating. So for me, this is the time when leaders need to stand up and lead, because I feel like we're not just fighting to finance change, we're also fighting for the truth in order to make the planet a healthier place in which people can thrive.
Imagine if, we were all taught to think about legacy right from the get-go.
Yeah.
What a difference that could make. I'm fascinated in all the work that I do, ultimately in trying to get to the nub of what makes people tick. I just wanted to just go into a bit of your background. So you grew up in Sheffield, as your accent betrays a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
And you went on to study finance at Bangor University. You're the first in your family to go to
First in my
university.
family to ever go to university, yes.
So
in
that's
the
amazing.
90s, yeah.
And then you joined HSBC, and you spent 23 years working at HSBC over various different areas of the bank. But in 2020, you decided to leave, and you joined the specialist social lender Unity Trust Bank, based in Birmingham. And I guess this does pick up on a customer question as well, but a question I have, which is trying to understand what that catalyst was, what actually prompted you to, leave HSBC to where you are now, which is this 100% values-based bank at Triodos. What was that moment? What was the catalyst?
If I just think about Mark outside of work, I actually just see myself as a humble working class lad. I've never wanted to be defined by my job title. I'd like to be defined by who I am and how I treat people. And I learned from a very young age, actually, just the values of honesty, decency, hard work. I actually was brought up in a really lovely village, but all surrounding it was mining villages. And, I went to secondary school in a mining village, and that's where my sort of, a lot of friends were, and some tough backgrounds. You were very aware of the social world in which you lived. And this was Sheffield in the 1980s as well. So it was boom and bust economics, recessions when they come were deep. But I maybe jumped on the hamster wheel for a while. And then I think having children was as it would be for a lot of people, sort of a real game changer in the sense that you start thinking about your life in a different way and what matters, and you worry more about your children's life than your own and what world are they being brought up into. I feel like we've entered the world of the mega billionaires, where a handful of people have got more wealth than everybody else in the world. I mean, it's deeply unjust, and it's not penetrating down into the people that most need it. And I think increasingly, I've sort of looked at both the political system and the economic system in which we operate and just come to the conclusion that this just doesn't work for ordinary people. You know, I joined HSBC in 1996. I should say I'm not here to either defend or criticise. For the most part, I had a wonderful career at HSBC. It's not about HSBC per se, but it felt like there was this disconnect between the boards that sit at the top of enormous organisations and the people who are working on the coalface. And the disconnect was such that what it felt to me like was that in the end, it's the shareholder that matters more than the employees or the customers. And that was the moment when, having never thought I would leave a large corporate of any kind, that I kind of went on a journey to look for something different. Unity proved to me that an ethical, transparent, sustainable banking model can work in a very small business. So that actually demonstrated ethical banking. And then Triodos was always seen to me as the place where it's delivered most successfully with the greatest breadth, and then also with the transformative impact side. So the move to Triodos also then felt very natural when that time came also.
You talked about that wealth inequality and described very well the disconnect when you were working with HSBC. And this is actually a customer question, which, there have been a number of questions actually around executive pay in banks, etc. How are you going to ensure that that culture doesn't seep into Triodos now that you're in charge?
We've got really strict principles, both at the UK and at the group level, in terms of fair pay. So you're right. I mean, executive pay in banks gets a lot of headlines, quite rightly. It's now actually feels like it's expanding into building societies for anyone that might have seen more recent press. I think I'm right in saying the mean CEO to co-worker industry average is something like 77 times. And I think the largest is 614 times, which, if I'm being honest with you, feels obscene. And I can't imagine any role where that's justified, even in the biggest organisations in the world. I refuse to believe it. There's only so many hours in a day that one human can give when all's said and done. At Triodos, to give you some sense, I think we're at 5.4 to 1. We believe in fair pay, but ethically based. And we don't pay bonuses. But as I say, the mechanisms around us and for my own personal values, I'm really confident we would never be in the space that you see in the headlines in other banks.
I guess I've got that privilege of being a customer, first and foremost, but I've also had the chance to do quite a number of these for Triodos. And the thing that's always struck me is employees, absolutely across the board, everyone I've met absolutely believe in what they do. Yeah. And, I get that sense from you as well, 100%. How do you stay optimistic? How do you stay energized, inspired, particularly in the kind of cultural moment, for want of a better word, that we're living through at the moment?
The biggest constant in my life, I would say, has been my passion for the natural world. So I love getting outside. I don't start any day's work without going outside for even a short period of time. That really gives me a kickstart to my day. And I love creating spaces for wildlife. So I actually just love being in the garden and growing things. I find it fascinating. I've had badgers move in, which I love catching on the trail cams. I don't love the destruction of my borders that comes with it, it's fair to say, but that, just comes with the territory. And I love being around water. I have sort of built a decent sized pond in the garden. I think within my first year of having the pond, I sort of was scooping out the algae from the bottom one day. I thought I'd caught a dinosaur that turned out to be a great crested new. And then I sort of freaked out knowing that I wasn't allowed to disturb it, but I didn't even know it was there. So it was huge. Like it was like catching a big fish. Obviously it wasn't that big, but anyway, but it was massive compared to a normal new, And that I was just like, for me, that was like a moment that will never leave me. And knowing that this is an endangered species, it's moved into my pond in my garden. So obviously now I don't disturb the pond, but that for me gives me, I really get fuel from it.
I was wondering about this lifestyle that you're describing that, seems to be on a decline, where not really connected with nature, not really connected with community. Is there a role for just making sure that we understand there's a demand and a need for these really tangible and important and simple pleasures in life, I guess? Like how do you thread that all together, and what role can Triodos play in all of that?
I think that sustainable banks are there to continue to play a lead role in shaping the agenda in the UK. I also think sustainable banks can look to try to create or help support new thinking on new economic models. The best example, I think, is right now is our nature-based solutions offering. Triodos developed nature-based solutions well ahead of the market. It had to take risks to get it to market, but did something that other banks would definitely not be engaging in the way that it allowed the rewilding and some of our environmental concerns to be integrated into our economic thinking and not in competition. I'm really looking forward to getting into the advocacy agenda at Triodos, being big supporters of the Climate and Nature Bill. So I think there's lots we'll continue to do from an advocacy perspective, and I'm really curious to know where that will go. Think about a lot of business we support, it is about community. A lot of our charitable ventures, a lot of our creative ventures are about how do you bring communities of people together. And I also see it as essential because I think it plays into this point of mistrust, misinformation, people not knowing their neighbours. When humans connect on a human level, the dynamic changes very quickly. It's very different to what people might want to put out on social media channels, where they don't have to face the person that they are, offending or making particular remarks about. So I'm really keen to know how we do that. And we do some small things, I should say, also within the bank itself. All of our co-workers get out in the community and go and support charities. So we also have charities that we support directly, but all of our teams are also encouraged to get out and work out where do they want to be in their local community, make a difference each year.
You've already alluded to the world that we live in and how it's changing. I mean, it's changing at breakneck speed. So how do you see Triodos remaining relevant? How do you see how it's going to be able to continue making a positive change, being a force for good in the world?
But in the end, it's knowing that we can make sustainable banking easier to say yes to, so more people want to join us as an option. I think the things we're doing today are really relevant, and the question therefore is, how do we ramp that up? How do we make sure the conscious use of money lives and breathes in society? This is the time to stand up and lead. It's not the time to shrink back. I'd love to hear more customer feedback. But to your point, the world is very polarized, and communities are, I think, the way to solve some of those problems and that human connection. And we really have that here, I think.
So that sort of brings me to my last question. Like me, your customers are really deeply invested in this bank's mission, which is to basically use our money for positive change. Is there anything you'd like to say directly to us, your customers?
I definitely would. An enormous thank you to you, Gillian, and to all the customers that watched and everyone that banks with us, because we would never ever take for granted the loyalty that our customers provide with us, or how we must use all of our customers' money to do good. And it would be easy to slip into habits or things that put profits above both people and planet. But they're not true to what we stand for. They're not the DNA of the organisation, and it's not the direction that we will ever head. Maybe one last thing, though, which actually is, if you love us, please recommend us. We need more people to join us to have more impact in the end. And customer recommendation is more important than any amount of marketing that we could put out. And we'd just love to have more word of mouth to get people come and bank with Triodos.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think if I'd like to get behind what makes people tick, I think this has definitely given people an impression. So thanks for your time. Thanks for giving us a little glimpse of what's going on behind the scenes at Triodos and the future for Triodos UK. Thank you also to all the customers who sent in their questions in advance. And thank you for listening as well. If you want to make a recommendation or just follow Triodos on socials, the link is in the bio below. Thanks for listening. Until the next time.